Today, I'm putting the final touches on this collage and wait until you see the impact they make. Over the past couple of months, I've created a study in my favorite cookbook, Sketchbook, for a gigantic piece I'm going to work on this winter. From the beginning layers of background and depth through color to highly textured layers tamed by faux and caustic, this study has tested the materials and the courage I need to work incredibly large. With a little bit of tech and a whole lot of intuition, I'm here, and this collage is ready for its final touches. I'm Jackie Bernardi, and welcome to my studio. This video is all about just the tiny little things you can do to really elevate what's in your sketchbook. And we're not going to use very many materials, but the materials that we use are going to make a big difference to the total look of the piece. Right here, this is just some cerulean blue, some Van Dyke brown, and some titanium white. And I'm going to use these to create a background color. Now, this study that I'm doing is for that 6-foot oyster that I'm going to work on this winter. And what I noticed is I love all the texture. I love everything that's going on in this background. However, the values are too similar to what's inside the oyster and the oyster shell itself, and naturally, the oyster is the actual subject of this painting. So I wanted to go in and create a background that would make the oyster pop without losing the texture and that beautiful undulating, oh, mess of beautiful background finish. Uh, and so what I'm going to do is I created this blend of these 3 colors, and I'm going to get the page really wet before I put the paint down. So you may have seen I sprayed some water on it with my continuous spray bottle, and the reason for that was just to make sure that when I put this opaque paint down, that it would thin out enough for me to be able to manipulate and to get the exact background finish that I want for this. Now, it looks quite gray here. In real life, it's a little bluer than this. And also, the camera facing me during this video, I had switched lenses and forgot to change the settings in the camera. So that looks kind of blown out. It's not important. My face has nothing to do with this process. I just wanted to recognize it. So what I'm doing is I'm just taking a blue shop towel and tamping out the color that, again, remember, is very, very wet because I had sprayed the page first with some water, and that gives me the time and the ability to really manipulate that opaque paint. And as I tap it out, it's just feathering out across the top so that there's no hard edges. And that is actually a painter's tip, a house painter's tip. If you're going to paint an area on a wall that has already been painted, say there was damage and you're going to paint it again, you want to feather out the edges, not just put a paint on with a paintbrush or a roller. You want to feather out the edges with a rag and you'll get a perfect finish every time. And that's really what I'm doing here. And as I go up, I'm not sure where I want to stop with this bluish background. So I'm just going in little sections on the way up. Now, again, this whole video is about little touches that make a big impact. I think you can see already that this oyster is really starting to pop out of the page because we have toned down the background in a way that the background is no longer competing with the very chunky like collage that I have in the interior of the oyster and the oyster shell itself. As I've worked up, I really felt the need to go all the way up with this. Mm, I'll call it background color. It's really just another layer, and the way that we're tamping it out creates actually its own texture. So it's sort of another layer of texture. even though what it's trying to do is unify the background in a way that it doesn't compete with the subject. Okay. I'm going to let this dry for a bit, and I'm going to use these water-soluble, they call them pastels. They're really like crayons, actually, and this is just the set of 10, and it's absolutely gorgeous. All the supplies for this video and every video are always listed in the description below, so if you want to find any of these supplies or tools, you can always find them there. And so this lime green, now if you've been following along in this series, when I started the painted oyster, which is actually on the other page of this sketchbook, um, that's covered up right now, but I started painting with a lime green on the oyster shell. So there is something about the lime green that is really calling to me, as is the aqua blue, because you've seen that also in several parts of even just this collage. You can actually see it inside the collage that I have papers that were hand painted with pinks and blues, and I've actually used that to help form the meat of the oyster. But what I'm doing with these crayons is I am going in just to add some zhuzh or some lift to different areas that I feel could benefit from just a little pop of color. And I'm talking really tiny, tiny pops of color. It was something that I noticed when I was finishing up this collage last week, that I had some of these really bright and wonderful colors in the painted papers that made up the collage, and I thought those were exciting, but when I finished, they were competing with the background page as it was, and also as the matte medium dried, the brilliance of the color sort of dissipated a little. Now, I am not going to use a gloss medium in this particular collage because I really do not want to have a glossy effect. I don't even want to have a gloss, 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 and then do a final layer with matte for this particular piece. I really wanted it to have this very grounded and matte type look all along. So what I couldn't make happen by using a couple of different mediums, I'm now making happen by going in with these crayons and just adding an itty bitty tiny little bit of color in certain spots. And I think you'll agree. I'll compare them later, but I think you'll agree it really made a big difference in between what you saw at the end of the video last week and what you'll see at the end of the video today. Plus, it's super fun, and because these are water soluble, I'm not using them that way today, but if because they are water soluble, if I really don't like it or if I overdo with a specific color, I can certainly go back in with a paintbrush that's wet and blend out um, that neo color until it is the way that I want it. Whereas with a real crayon, you couldn't do that. It's just wax and you can't do anything. I'm loving what's happening here with the shell. This, sort of ochre yellow color is really bringing in some elements that you see in a real oyster shell, and, because of all the texture on the page, what I'm not getting are straight lines of color, which is not what I want. I want that textury kind of effect that happens when the crayon goes over it. If you've been following along and have enjoyed this series, I've got something really exciting to tell you about. And that is, I am going to be filming the entire process of creating the giant oyster. And I will show the video of me creating the giant oyster here on YouTube once it's done. but it's likely to be a time lapse. So if you want to be notified when inside my community, I've posted the videos, I'm going to give the complete commentary no matter how many hours it is. I'm going to give the complete commentary on what I'm doing. If that's something that might interest you even a little bit, I would recommend getting on my mailing list, which you can do in the description below, and then you'll be notified when that's available, and you can decide then if that's something you're interested. But I'm not going to be advertising it here on YouTube, so the mailing list is the place to find out everything I have going on outside of YouTube. As per usual, somehow, some way, graphite always ends up in a piece I'm working on. And here I'm using it to help create some lift and shadow between the oyster shell and the background. I'm not intending for this to look like the oyster is standing up on something. So I really don't want a heavy shadow. And that's why I like using the graphite because I can put it on, the water soluble graphite, I should say. You can put it on and then just go in and blend it until you get the exact quality that you're looking for. As you're going to see, I go back and forth and back and forth and back and forth with it. Uh, and I do that for quite a while. In fact, I did that for an enormous amount of time, and I did cut that down in the edit because, you know, it's not that fun to watch paint dry. Well, it's not that fun to watch me manipulate graphite for a very, very long time. But I think you can see where I'm going with this. And from this angle, it looks really dark, but I am just trying to create a little tiny bit of separation without obliterating the background. I'm gonna let it dry. And I've noticed some areas here that feel a little raw from the background. Oh, no, that's not raw. You know what that is? If you watched last week, you saw the mistake I made trying to do the highlight. And the paper that I used, I thought was the medical exam paper, and it was not. It was actually the wet strength tissue paper. So when I put it down, I thought it was going to go transparent. It didn't. It went barely translucent. And so it looked like there was this edge around the shell. So what you just saw me do there, adding more paint, is that's an effort to mask the outline, as it were, and it actually did a pretty good job. Once it's dry, you'll see you really can't see that outline at all anymore. So I guess the message there about that is be patient with yourself. You may make a mistake, like I made a big mistake with that last week. I'm not gonna lie, I was quite upset about it. But I also knew if I was patient and I waited, the opportunity to fix it would present itself. And that's exactly what happened today. So, there's so many things you learn when you're creating, and so much more of it is about mental stuff in your head as opposed to actually learning new skills as a creative. Okay, so what's happening here is I felt like there was not enough lift. So I went back in and I added more graphite. And again, because it's water soluble, you can keep doing that. And if you don't like it, you can essentially erase it all. But I'm pretty happy with what's happening here. So there were some shaping things that I was having a challenging time creating just by using the paper. And so what you're seeing me do here is go in with some of the titanium white mixed with a itty bitty, just a tiny amount of Van Dyke Brown. And I'm trying to create a bit of a highlight, but not for highlight's sake. Like, I don't want this to look like a big wet oyster necessarily. But what I'm hoping the highlight does is create more of the shape that I'm looking for the inside of this oyster. And If you have been watching along in the series, you know that the other side of this page is a painted oyster. It was not collaged, it was hand painted. And I did both sides because the truth is before doing this series, I really had no idea if I would do a painted oyster. This is giant oyster, 6-foot oyster. I didn't know if I was going to do it as a painting or as a collage or as both. And so that's why I had both sides. But what I can see here with this sample oyster in collage is that I do need to add a little bit of paint, at least with the paper configuration in this study. You do need a little paint to help create form for the oyster itself. So, if you were wondering why I did a whole painted oyster and why I did a whole collage oyster, it's because I wanted to see which style excited me the most or left me like because doing a 6-foot painting of anything, you've gotta be in love with what you are working on. Otherwise, why would you go through the expense and and the emotional oomph of creating such a large piece? You've gotta love what you intend to do. And I think what I discovered during this process is the hand painting the papers, the gel printing the papers, most of the papers that you're seeing in this oyster were gel printed papers. Um, the excitement about creating all of that and then laying it down and the puzzle of trying to figure out which piece goes where and why and what looks best, especially when you're not going for photorealism. It became really clear to me that the giant piece is going to be based on collage, and I will use hand painting to help shape and form if I need to. Same thing with the neo colors, same thing like with any material or supply that I might use on the giant one. What I know for sure is that this giant oyster wants to be a mixed media piece and not a hand painted piece. I wouldn't have known that if I didn't do this study, and truthfully, I could have wasted a lot of time and money trying to make something that wasn't going to light me up. Now, I promise you, the finished the finished work will not look exactly like this. It's not possible for it to look exactly like this. I'll have to recreate new painted papers and colors that I like. Um, It'll be different texture, just the vast size of it will change the way it looks. So I think I'm good where I am now, but there are a couple things that I still want to do to finish this piece, right? The finishing touches are everything, and so what I wanna do now see, that's the painted oyster over on the right-hand side, and, looking at the background, it's a little too uniform, even, with the opaque blue. I lost some of that oh, I don't know, some of the texture, some of the undulating feel that I liked so much. So what I'm doing here is I'm taking isopropyl alcohol, and yes, I should be wearing a mask. I am not wearing a mask. I used very little alcohol here, but because I'm spraying it, I really should have worn a mask. I'm putting the alcohol on this blue shop towel and then using it, gently rubbing the paint and using it as an eraser. Now, this was dry when I started this, but it wasn't like it had been dried for a week. Let me tell you something, and I learned this during my cabinet painting days. Isopropyl alcohol is an excellent eraser for acrylic paints. Okay. So if you have a background, if you have a painting and you've gone too heavy or too opaque, you can always knock it back by rubbing it with some isopropyl alcohol. So one of the things you have to do though is if you do use alcohol on your acrylic paints, you really have to let it dry, and I mean really dry before you do anything else to it. So while that's drying, I'm going to go over to the hand painted side, and I am going to go ahead and put on some of the Dorland's wax. Now, one of the videos in this series, and I'll link to it down below, I showed you how to make sure your pages don't stick together when you close your sketchbook. And because this is so highly textured and we've got so much paint and so much medium on these 2 pages, I wanted to make sure to go in right now before I forget and put some wax on the hand painted side. Here's a tip. I am gonna go back in once the other page is fully dry after a few days, and I'm gonna put wax on that side too, because there's so much happening here that the weight of the book, and this is a very, very heavy cookbook, the weight of the book and the amount of medium and papers, it is likely to stick. So you definitely wanna have the wax on both sides or separate it with a piece of wax paper. Whatever works for you, go ahead and watch the video and see the different options that I use. But look at I am so happy with this. I'm so happy with both sides, to be very honest. But this, the collage side has my heart. It really does. I love it. I've never done anything like that before. Not even close. I've never done a collage in this style or with the crazy pant colors that I chose, but I love it. In fact, since I filmed this, every day I go into the studio just to look at this. So I really like it. I hope you like it, and I hope that you have truly enjoyed this series. If you wanna watch it all from, beginning to end, there is a link to the entire playlist in the description below, as well as all of the materials that I used in this video. Thank you so much for being here for this video. If you've been along with me on the whole series, thank you so much. It has been so much, and I know that, but I appreciate you and I appreciate you supporting my channel.